show up and you provide something for the day, for the time period?
Nowadays, it's just I just show up. It used to be that we had an agenda, but
you got that to a place where you're
yeah,
no longer needed.
That's what's kind of weird about.
Are we recording right now?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that's what's kind of weird about therapy from my perspective is like, I sometimes wonder, like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Like, I know I came in here for a specific purpose, but we've just meandered so far away. However, I originally went in to start seeing George. Have you heard of something called depersonalization?
Mm-mm.
So do you remember in our first session I talked about how I used to get panic attacks when I was a kid?
The TV dot.
Yeah. So, and I briefly touched upon this, but I had a really bad panic attack one time, and I really worked myself up to kind of the point where I started, like, my vision started getting blurry, and I started seeing spots, and I was basically like getting ready to pass out, like hyperventilating.
Yeah, sounds like it.
It was a really intense one, and I was exhausted afterwards. And the next morning, I went to bed. I woke up, and I felt different. I felt weird. I felt foggy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel myself. And it's kind of like I was there, right? I was physically somewhere, but I wasn't, like, present.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was a disconnect between what I was doing and, my experience. And it was like that the next day, and it was like that the day after, and I started to get really anxious about it.
Mm.
I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, I don't feel like I did before that one instance. And this is going to sound like weird and ridiculous. And but after days turned into weeks, I convinced myself, I think at one point I convinced myself, like, okay, when I had that big episode, it's because I was afraid I'd, like, pinched a nerve in my head, and I was like, oh, must have blown a blood vessel. So I convinced myself that I was in a coma, and I wasn't actually here.
Mm-hmm.
And that spiraled out of control into just me being obsessed with, like, this feeling of, long story short, I've had that since the day, I was probably 12 years old at the time, and I never, noticed a change back. And I went to see George to talk about, I did a ton of Googling. I spent so many years trying to figure out what it was. And I landed on this thing called depersonalization, which is basically where your mind is elsewhere. Like they associate it with, like, PTSD sufferers have it a lot. And it's just kind of like there's a disassociation between what's going on in your head and reality. You're not, like, fully present. So I went to see him to talk about it and to see if he could help me with it. And he hadn't heard of it. And but we talked about it, and just led to covering off on other subjects. And, here I am 7 years later, or whatever it is.
Do you feel like you still have that right now?
Yeah. Yep.
And you connect it to that moment.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't even, to this day, I don't like talking about it because, A, I can't figure it out, and B, it's been so, and I knew this would happen. It's been so long where I was like, how am I even going to tell what's normal? Would I know normal if I even, maybe I am normal, and it's all in my head. I don't know. I spent so many days, like, just so much time obsessing over it. I finally just kind of put it in the back of my mind, so to speak. Like, it is what it is. Let's enjoy life. But there are a lot of times where I just don't feel like I'm here. And I've gotten used to that. And it's been the trippiest thing in the world. And it was so challenging as a kid going through that. Because I was like, am I crazy? I told my parents, and they're like, okay, you're crazy, but we'll take you to the doctor. They thought maybe I was hypoglycemic, and I was, like, sugar rushes, blood sugar. And I remember telling the doctor, hey, this is what I feel like. I feel like this all the time. And my mom stepped in, and she corrected me to the doctor. And I was so annoyed that she did it at the time. But now I'm realizing, like, she just didn't want me to come across as, like, a crazy person. She was trying to keep the doctor from being like, maybe we should send you to someone else.
A 72-hour
Yeah.
Yeah, involuntary commitment kind of thing.
But they were kind of like, this is all in your head. Just calm down. You're fine. And I was like, okay, if it is in my head, like it's still there and it's still uncomfortable. What do I do?
Yeah, so in all your research,
Yeah.
you went to go see George about it. He hadn't heard about it. He probably read up somewhat on it. You educated him a little bit about it. What's the prognosis? Where does this go? What do people who have felt something similar? What do they do with this?
Yeah, well,
Stay in their comas?
not to put the pressure on George, but we never really arrived anywhere. We never talked about, hey, here's where you end up. I don't know that he did research on it. I mean, I told him, I came in, I told him how I was feeling.
Yeah.
He responded to that. But the only thing I kind of learned was the people who have it had a event that caused so much stress that they decided to start to like disengage with reality. I was like, well, that kind of sounds like when I had that, I was having all these panic attacks and I had this one really big one. So maybe that was it. But what I did read was like, you go to therapy, you do CBT or whatever, right? And then,
Cognitive behavioral therapy, right?
yep. And I think some of them were like, you relive, you try to relive the trauma, blah, blah, blah. I really wanted to get an MRI or a C scan or whatever. What's CAT scan? Just to be like, can you look at my brain and tell me if there's something weird going on?
Yeah, did a part of it die?
What
was
happened?
there,
Yeah,
was there
dude.
spotting something?
I like a part of me still to this day thinks if I went and got one, they'd be like, oh yeah, you're missing this whole little section over here.
The entire neocortex.
Have you ever felt like, so here's the kicker, like I had experienced this feeling before it was permanent. So I was familiar with it. And it only occurred in moments where I was like playing, like really caught up in playing. And I was really tired. And I remember in those moments, I'd be like, whoa, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like I'm just kind of, like my mind's not here. And granted, I was a little kid, but have you ever had that where like there's so much you're heat of the moment kind of a thing where you're just like, well, it's almost like I'm on autopilot. That's how it feels. And that's how it was. And I get like that all the time. And part of me is like, is it because I'm so in my brain and I'm just thinking like, would it help if I could just like meditate a ton? Yeah. That's what originally brought me to George, depersonalization.
Yeah, so it has a name.
Dissociation.
It has descriptors of what
Yeah.
that you identify with and connect to, right? But it doesn't necessarily have a cure. Like people aren't saying you'll get back to pre-event functioning. This is the new normal.
That is what I have come to accept.
But do you walk around in your day thinking I'm different than everybody else? I'm having a different experience of humanity than anybody else.
Not anymore, but I did for like 10 years straight.
Yeah. Okay.
Every day. I mean, I thought about it every day. I think it must have happened when I was like 11. And I stopped thinking about it around college.
And when we talked about your alcohol use at one point, when you were less in charge of your faculties, so not thinking the way that you normally think, were you more aware of or less aware of this?
Less aware.
Depersonalization? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely less aware. I was less aware of everything when I was...
Right, but I wondered if being inebriated, being drunk, or anything not helped, but did a reset, or
I don't know. I wouldn't even think of it
in those moments. It wasn't even on your radar.
Yep. Which, like, who's to say what is the difference between being quote unquote normal Alex and not having it on my radar?
Right.
But all I can say is that it felt like it was harder for me to focus. It felt like it was harder for me to like be present with stuff. And I was wondering like, man, would I be doing better at school or would I, right?
No, that's a great
would
thing
I
to
be,
wonder about. Could I give, could I be more present? 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 Could
could I be present with more activities and do a better job instead of like being like, oh, like even right now, like I don't feel like I'm here. My brain is all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I look at my hands and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I'm in a body, like I'm physically in a location, but
Mm-hmm.
it just doesn't register a lot of the times. Like it feels like a part of my brain is hiding.
Mm.
But I'm sure if I did
Like it's a part of your brain that you're missing. Like,
Yep.
like I miss this part of my brain.
Yeah.
Not that
It's turned
I'm
off.
missing this part of my brain, but I miss it. I wish
it was bad. Yeah,
it
I
was
wish like I feel like there is a version of my brain and a version of my experience that is missing currently.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's turned off. It was turned off like there was a short in the circuit board. And so now this part isn't getting electricity.
I don't have access to it
Yep,
anymore.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like, again, I went down the rabbit hole of like, okay, and I started doing experiments to try and prove, like, if I was in a dream, could I do this or could I do that? Or,
Mm-hmm.
because I was so convinced that.
And this was when you were younger, when you were
Yep.
through adolescence and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't think I really told any of my friends because they think I was crazy.
Yeah, it must have been torturous.
Yeah, it sucked, especially because my parents were like, dude,
Don't tell people this.
yeah.
Because you're gonna
They're
come
gonna
off
think
like
you're crazy.
A whack job. Mhm.
And like, yeah, okay. I was a weird kid in the sense that my brain was very active. I had a very active mind, but I was suffering with it. And every day I carried this and I didn't talk to anyone about it. There was no one I could talk to about it. And yeah, that was a huge bummer. And it's kind of, I don't even like thinking about what kind of adaptive strategy I must have, like what does that teach a young, impressionable kid? When he's like, I have this thing that's bothering me so badly, but I cannot speak about it or else I just can't share it.
Mm-hmm.
That is like I wish that upon no young human. Makes me so sad to think about that. But I digress.
Yeah, great thing to talk to your parents about now. Now that you have a different understanding about it, like, gee, what was that like? And, we're at the doctor's office and I'm explaining it and you guys are like, hold back here a little bit. And
you know what they would say? I don't remember it like that. Did that really, was it like that? No. I'd be like, revisionist history. Isn't that a thing?
maybe. I wonder, when people meditate, just try to empty their mind. I wonder if that's something you could do.
Yeah, so I meditate. I haven't been lately, but I have the Headspace app. No, not
So when you
sponsored.
meditate, is it about clearing your mind or is it about thinking even more? Because
It's about clearing the mind.
Because my sense is that you're really cerebral and that's your go-to is thinking.
And then I use meditation to stop that.
Yeah.
The exercise is to say, see the there's a great animation, monkey brain. Monkey brain is something that's like, it's this little monkey, and the more you try to keep it in one place, the more it hops around. But if you let it hop around a bunch and gently kind of correct it, it'll calm down and then it'll just be chill. So I use the most helpful technique for me is counting my breaths. Count from 1 to 10. And in that process, if a thought enters and I get distracted, I acknowledge that. I say, okay, there's my brain doing its brain thing. And then I go back. And sometimes I can get in a really great spot. And it's very helpful. I feel...
And you get to that great spot, and then what is that great spot in relation to pre-coma state?
That's a great question. My gut is like, we are closer to it.
Yeah.
We're not there, but this is the right way to it.
Okay.
But who knows?
You said your gut and you pointed to your heart, which is fascinating to me.
My soul.
Uh-huh.
I don't have rationale or evidence to support this, but this is what I feel.
Mm-hmm.
That brings me closer to it.
That what brings you closer to what?
Sorry. That meditation brings me closer to pre-coma Alex.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you also said soul. What do you mean by soul?
Soul. Mind, body, spirit. So, mind, thought. I would use spirit and soul synonymous with like. I have a voice. I'm sure everyone has a voice in terms of like, hey, it's just like Alex. I don't know how else to describe it. Tells me to burn things. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't. Yeah, my soul. I don't know. My spirit. My
conscience. It's more than that. Is it more than that?
Yeah, because conscience. I'm like that might be. I don't know. Don't have an answer. It's kind of like a gut feeling, instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Where that comes from, I do not know, but I'm sure it's a amalgamation of things I've heard, things I've experienced, to form this sort of like voice that's like, "Hey, do this, don't do this." I think this is the way. Get into like a cool spirituality, kind of. Could be the universe. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The unknown. That's my favorite thing about being human. Is that there's this kind of unexplainable entity.
But you call it you refer to it as your soul, your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Those words for me mean like an extra dimension, a different dimension, an unseeable dimension, spiritual realm, something like that.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. When I say soul spirit, that's like, oof. I guess it's synonymous with like the unknown. Yeah. Spiritual.
Yeah. So I mean, right now I'm thinking about the TV and the light that goes out and dims.
Yep.
And that 10-year-old Alex
Mm-hmm.
at the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? 10-year-old Alex who wondered, like, is this what death is like? You know, you die and you just fade into this blip. And but if you're talking about having a spirit or a soul, does that persist in your mind and how you think about things? And
I do not know how I feel. I think a part of me is like, it would be really cool if death was another step in the process of the human experience, right? Or it's like death was just, like I guess where I stand is I exist within a physical organic body,
mm-hmm.
that this thing has a shelf life.
Mm-hmm.
And when it expires, does this entity go somewhere else? I don't know. Maybe it goes into the universe. I don't know. I do not know.
There are people who believe that we go into another body, another
I don't
another
believe I stay. I don't think I'm going to become like a frog or like another human.
Or a frog human.
Or a frog human. A French person. But my dad's not going to like that one. Because they call French people frogs. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
I'm aware.
I kind of think I'm really fascinated by the universe, and specifically how vast it is and how it's continuing to expand, and we don't exactly know how it got started or where it's growing or what's the beginning and what's the end. And I think there's something to be, I don't know why, but I feel as though there is a connection between that vastness and the spirit. And so, I don't know. I was, when the light first dimmed on that TV, I was most afraid of and concerned with the expiration of, the body. And then does the mind.
Of me.
Yeah.
My expiration, right?
And I think what frightened me was the mind turning off. And I do believe the brain also being an organic thing, that
Entity.
shuts off.
Mm-hmm.
But the spirit and the soul, that's got a fighting chance. Like maybe that gets out of there. So, but I do not know. I do not know.
Is it an important question for you to answer?
I love that question, and I love the idea of it, and yeah.
The idea of getting an answer?
I love the idea of thinking about it,
Uh-huh.
and to me that feels like more of a kind of thing that can give me perspective.
Hmm.
A valuable pursuit in terms of like, hey, this would be good to consider more often, because it will help give you context for all the things that are going on that are bothering you or not bothering, So yes, it is of value to think about this and reflect upon it. My one hesitation is I'm very sensitive to, like, as I'm sure most people are, to this notion of like dogma and like, hey, this is the only way to interpret it. If you don't interpret it, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, if you don't embrace this way of looking at it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's why, like, I did not grow up in a religious household, but my mom was always quite spiritual in the sense that she also appreciates elements of human existence that we haven't figured out yet, and we won't ever figure out. And there's something there, and it's worth thinking about it, embracing it, nurturing it, whatever you want to call it. And it's ironic because she was raised Christian Scientist, which, I mean, I would say that's a pretty like involved sect, so to speak, but she kind of experienced it, but it didn't like define her. She just sort of went on her own spiritual path. She's really big into crystals. No, she's not. Just kidding. Not that if you are, that's totally fine. Anyone out there. But yeah, I've thought a lot about religion, and at one point, so my brother's baptized, I was not. And I was like, that's no fair. I don't want to go to limbo.
Limbo, right?
So I looked into getting baptized. It's way harder to get baptized when you're older than it is when you're a baby. It's like, all right, let's dunk them. But like when you're an adult, it's like, okay, you got to pass this test. You got to study these things. Yep. But I've always had like I'm more fascinated with the spirit and spiritualness than like the religious clubs, so to speak.
Yeah. I think what you described, that group is growing today. People interested in a spiritual dimension, a connection beyond the shelf life we have, our bodies, but not necessarily wanting to embrace a dogmatic approach to what is and what isn't true.
Yeah. That wouldn't surprise me to hear. And religion is so Haley, my fiance, she was a finance major in college.
Religion. That's her religion.
But she was going to be a theology. It was either that or theology. She was very interested in studying religion. She grew up very religious.
Money or religion?
Yeah. Hey, they go hand in hand.
They can. Some people have got it figured out.
Yeah, Catholic Church. Take that. Yeah, I got him. So
just lost another sponsor.
Yeah, I'm okay with letting that one go. So I mean, she's going to find this episode very fascinating. She loved her theology courses just for the like debate and thinking about it. And but yeah, I think that also drives, like, it's related to my therapy work too, because it's attached to this idea that I want to be a good version of myself, or like a good person. Like I want to understand you hear this term authentic self, and that could be kind of synonymous with spirit, if you will. And I think my therapy work has allowed me to get closer to that and understand it and embrace it. So what's your take on all that? Do you know where I'm going to go when I die?
Do I know where you're going to go? Probably limbo. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I've got it all figured out.
Yeah. I don't know
but I like to think about that there's something more than this world.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's what's so crazy. It's like, have you seen the movie? You seen the movie Men in Black?
Uh-huh.
So, spoiler alert, if anyone has not seen Men in Black, I believe it's Men in Black 2. If anyone has not seen it, stop listening right now. But have you seen the second one?
I think so.
At the end of it, they reveal that they're just inside of a locker. They open the door, right? Yeah. And it's just a locker in an alien airport. and they kind of pan out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the entire human existence was just in a locker.
Right.
Like, I loved that idea.
Yeah, they did the same kind of thing at the end of the first one as well.
Did
right?
they?
The little thing that was on the cat's on
That's
Orion's
the second one.
belt.
Isn't that the second one?
I thought it was the first. Anyway, but they zoom out and it's a whole entire.
Yeah,
solar
you're right.
system.
Actually, the cat is the first one. Yes, exactly. And I love the idea of like human, planet Earth. Sometimes I think that like planet Earth, it's kind of fascinating to consider the universe like cells in a body. It's like, what if we're just a blood cell? I don't know. There's so many crazy things you can think about. But I do agree. I share your belief that there is something bigger.
When you do think about those kinds of things, you can easily get to like the vastness of what we consider to be our universe, and we're just scraping
the surface.
Of like the limits of what we know because of Hubble, and now there's another microscope out there. It's called something else.
The new
it's
one,
like the new Hubble.
So one's badass.
Double bubble Hubble.
Yeah.
Double Hubble, and double trouble. Anyway,
double Hubble.
So we're seeing more of what's out there and expanding beyond what we ever thought about, and we have the same kind of. I mean, that's the outward view from the human, but then the inward at the DNA level and the subatomic particle level and things like that. Particles of me mixing with particles of you, mixing with particles of this chair. And
what's it? Neil deGrasse Tyson said that the vastness of the universe, the most common element is, I think it's carbon, which is a fundamental element of human.
Most of what we're made up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's like, we are made of stars, and that was his poetic statement.
Yeah, and there's that religious, biblical, you were made out of dust, created out of the dust of the earth. I mean, that's consistent
From
with
dust to
with
dust.
what physicists and
And like talking about this kind of stuff too sort of calms down the fear I have that I'm in a coma, like in terms of like, because there's something to be said about, okay, my existence right now in this moment is just a fraction of a long timeline of experience that goes on for infinity or whatever,
like a blip.
Yeah. So it's like, okay,
That's your Men in Black moment.
Yeah.
It's all just a blip.
whether or not I am depersonalized or not, there is this greater experience and this greater.
Yeah.
So it's kind of grounding and calming in that regard. Which is why I love looking at space pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only imagine what it would be like to be an astronaut and look at planet Earth from, it's like all those problems I had, they're just in that little tiny little dot and covered up with my thumb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But my grades were not good enough to be an astronaut, Dr. Steve. I couldn't hack it.
Yeah. Well, join the club.
I wanted to be an Air Force pilot, and in college I was just obsessed with it, and I got really drunk, and I submitted for the Air Force, and they called me back the next morning. I was like, ooh. And they were like, hey, you can't join. Sorry, you can't be a pilot.
Because
They're like, what are you studying? And I was like, English literature. And they're like, yeah, no, you need advanced math, science. But they're like, but you could, maybe be a drone operator. I was like, no, I'm out. Sorry. Thanks for the call. Catch you later.
yeah.
But if I could do, Air Force pilot, Formula One race car driver would be my top two.
Hmm.
If I wasn't.
There's like only 20 Formula One race car drivers.
Mhm. Correct. Yep. That is true. Yeah, so depersonalization, the universe, the human spirit. It's a pretty heavy episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
Heavy session.
Good place to wrap up.
So, and it's good context for you just to know that that's kind of always going on. But maybe I'd spend some
So
more.
if you're in a coma right now,
Yeah.
does that mean I'm
Yeah.
joining you in the coma? Like,
No, I just made you up.
I'm a construct.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
You've provided me with really cute grandkids, by the way. So I appreciate that.
I mean, that is the level of detail.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I mean, there have been movies on this very subject. I'm sure of it.
Probably podcasts.
It's probably podcasts. But you're well. Yeah, my brain says. See, my brain is just doing this to convince me.
That you're not.
Yeah. Wait.
Or that you are.
That I am not in a coma. Because it doesn't want me to know that I'm in a coma.
It's such an elaborate. I mean,
I know.
It's so well done.
Yeah.
Because
totally.
like you give me transmission problems in my car.
The level of detail.
You created a 56-year backstory for me that
correct.
I have actually lived to get to this moment.
Yep. Yeah, it's just like a really, really.
And there's some things I could have done without along that 56
But that
years.
would have detracted from the authenticity of your character.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, man. I remember telling my philosophy professor in college about it, and he was just like, interesting.
Yeah. Well, I would think the philosophy people would be like, this is exactly what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
This
It's
is where
'cause
we need. But
the brain in the vat is like the famous thought experiment.
the brain in the vat?
Yeah, are we just a brain? How can you prove? Apparently, if I'm remembering this correctly, it is impossible to disprove the argument that we are a brain in a vat.
That's the plot of The Matrix.
Yeah, yep. So, yep. All right, well, we can wrap that up there. Thank you, Dr. Steve, for your time, as always.
Yeah, good convo.
Good convo, and we would like to thank our sponsor, the Catholic Church. We appreciate all that you do. And in the meantime, everyone listening, I hope you're doing well. Thank you for all your nice comments. And
No one's commenting.
no one's commenting for you. No one's commenting.
No
but I'm
one's
getting
commenting.
messages and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep. And in the meantime,
All right. Take
stay
care.
happy. All right. See ya. Bye.